Happy day to you. We hope you are reaching your highest level mental, physical, and spiritual awakening, happiness, security. And we're glad that you have joined us for this week's episode of Our Ancestors' Voices, a weekly program sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Hello and greetings on this day, the day of martyrs, as we call it. We're going to be talking today about the contributions of Patrice Lumumba, Maurice Mpolo, and Joseph Okito, two valiant members of the Congolese National Movement who were all assassinated on January 17th, 1961, as well as we will be talking about Alprentice Bunchy Carter and John Huggins, two members of the Black Panther Party who were assassinated on January 17th, 1969. And what these sacrifices mean or should mean to us today. So we're glad that you joined us. We give honor and thanks to the indigenous people of the Western Hemisphere. And now yet just now seeing another one of these coon videos. This one was with Ice Cube and Roland Martin here in this country. And Ice Cube is talking about how a lot of us here are Native Americans, talking about African people. We've always been in America. Y'all got to stop listening to these dumbass celebrities. I mean, that's all I can say about it. Like, what the question you have to ask is, what credentials does Ice Cube have to talk about our people's history? Zero. I mean, he was a good lyricist back in his day. He's old now, but he's a good lyricist back in his day, and he knows how to make a funny movie. But none of those things qualify you to talk about our people's history and where we stand in this society. I don't understand why people would listen to someone like that for questions like that. So, this is an insult to those of us who know our African history, which he doesn't. There's nothing he's ever produced that would give you any idea that he has any knowledge of our African history. So don't come to us with that. He knows nothing about it. So those people who know nothing about our African history, it's an insult to those of us that do. For these people to be sitting around talking about we're Native Americans, it's also an insult to the real natives of this hemisphere. So we want to make it clear we don't support that kind of stupidity because that's all it is absolute stupidity. Uh, Read a book, learn something about our history other than just running your mouth like you're standing in front of a liquor store. That's the only difference. They just have an internet account now. But I hear better analysis in front of a liquor store. And we give honor and respect to our ancestors. We don't disrespect them by denying our relationship to them. What a bunch of cowards and idiots and fools who would do that. I mean, it's absolutely disgraceful. We give honor to our ancestors, as we're going to do during this program today. So we're thankful to our African ancestors who fight for our dignity. We're talking about that. People that fight for our dignity, not people that fight for record contracts and movie contracts. That's not fighting for our dignity. And those movies, Ice Cube makes a funny movie, but a lot of them are just really disrespectful to who we are as a people. And a lot of you watch that and you don't know our history any better than those clowns do. So you think that how they portray us in that clown coonish demeanor in those movies, the Friday movies and all those movies he's made, that's some sort of representation of African culture. No, it's not that. It's all it is a caricature of us that makes money in Hollywood. That's all it is. So we don't listen to people like there's nothing if I want to know how to rap lyrics over samples, then I'll listen to Ice Cube and people like that. Then I'll listen to Mace and Waka Flocka and all these damn idiots. When I want to learn how to rap over some samples, I'll listen to them. But when we're talking about who we are as a people, there's nothing those clowns can say to me that I need to listen to. Just like they don't need to listen to me about how to produce a rap song. They'd be out of their damn minds if they listened to me about how to make a rap song. Well, equally so, I'd be out of my damn mind listening to any of those clowns talk about who we are as a people. So we're glad that you have joined us. And we, as we always do, just like to give the brief introduction about who we are. Our Ancestors' Voices is sponsored by the All African People's Revolutionary Party, AAPRP, not Death Row Records or Ruthless Records or Priority Records or any of these capitalist corporations. We are sponsored by the AAPRP, which is a revolutionary, independent, mass, pan-African political party with its base in Africa, not in Hollywood. Okay, in Africa. That's where our base is. And our objective is Pan-Africanism, which we define as one unified socialist Africa. That's our collective objective for the masses of African people, not my individual objective to become a billionaire like these clowns that I've been talking about. That's not our objective. We have a collective objective for one unified socialist Africa. So we can't do that listening to people whose only objective is to make money and become billionaires. This is the reason why we're in the situation that we're in, because this system has created people like that to trample on the masses of us. So our work to achieve Pan-Africanism is outlined in Kwame Nkrumah's Handbook of Revolutionary Warfare. And I guess that's where the struggle is. Because for me, I grew up being exposed to role models like Kwame Nkrumah and Sekou Touré and Amilcar Cabral and Carmen Piera and Teodoro Gomez and Mbalia Kamara and Andre Balloon and Malcolm X, Huey P. Newton. These were the Assata Shakur. These are the people, Frantz Fanon, George Padmore. These are the people that I grew up, Patrice Lumumba, being exposed to as role models, Thomas Sankara, Mangaliso Sobukwe. These are the people, Elizabeth Sabeko, that I grew up being influenced by. So since those strong Africans were my role models, I realize a lot of people have come up after that, like within the last 20, 30 years, you didn't come up with that. You came up with Ice Cube and Method Man. And so but there's no comparison. Like those people have nothing to offer other than rap lyrics and acting ability. They have no knowledge, no experience struggling for our people's liberation. None of them belong to any organizations fighting for us. Not a single one of them. So some of them are really talented with what they do. But again, that's our struggle for liberation is outside of these people's realm. So please just stop listening to them and what they have to say. We're Native Americans. A large percentage of us are Native. I mean, and the fact that in 2025 people can say something like that with no evidence, and most people don't even know to ask for any evidence. Like that's just really disgraceful. So our Ancestors' Voices is a program each week, same time, same place. As I mentioned, sponsored by the APRP, myself and Shakura, my African daughter. We host this program every week. We are both organizers for the All African People's Revolutionary Party, not the All We've Always Been in America People's Revolution. I mean, this is just, if it wasn't such a detrimental impact on our efforts to move forward, it would be funny. So to get us started for this week's topic, a tribute to the Martyrs, January 17th, I will turn it over to Shakura.
Thank you, comrade. That was actually pretty funny what you just said. If it wasn't such a step backwards, it would be funny. It was, and that was a very good joke. Thank you so much. All right. Hello, everyone. Greetings. So we are blessed with the ability to talk about so many comrades who have paved the way for us. These folks understand the true definition of sacrifice. They have showed nothing but humanity, collectivism, egalitarianism. They have demonstrated what it means to be selflessness. They have put their lives on the line for us more than once. And we have an opportunity to increase our political education today in this time period by potentially learning more about these folks or learning for the first time who these individuals are and how they have decided collectively to join some type of organization that is working for justice so that they continue to work with their legacy to advance the struggles of African people, colonized people, impoverished people all over the world, right? And the key point is every single one of these folks that you see on the slide was in some organization at some point in their life, if not multiple organizations. So again, we're always, always, always pushing for you all to join some organization that is working for justice. And I love how Comrade Ajamu says, we don't set trip. We don't. We never threatened you to say you had to join our organization. We just ask you to join some organization. So clearly, I mean, we could see so many different examples, you know, with Nkrumah, with the Conventions People Party. We have Kwame Ture. He was in the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee. He was also a member of the Black Panthers. Speaking of the Black Panthers, we have Huey P. Newton. I mean, we have Dr. King, who was with the Southern Christian Leadership Conference. I mean, there's so many different examples here that we can think of, right? And so it's really important for us to understand what that looks like in terms of understanding that these folks made a clear effort, that they understood, and maybe they didn't even understand it completely, but they understood enough to understand that they're not going to be able to make any changes by themselves, which is why they decided to join these organizations. Maybe at the time, that wasn't what was going through their mind. At the time, what might have been going through their minds was, I want to do something to make a difference. I want to do something to change the reality of people that look like me. I want to do something because I know that this world could be a better place. And in doing that, they were able to push in and kind of see these different pieces. I should also mention the most obvious. Kwame Ture was a member of the All African People's Revolutionary Party. Not sure how I missed that. You all know where my brain is these days. But my point is, these are different examples of organizations that are doing the work. So if you don't want to join our organization, that's totally fine. But we strongly encourage you to do research. Create a list of organizations that you have respect for and that you want to learn more about, and go to their meetings. Test them out. See if it'll be a good fit for you. Test it out. If you don't like it, try another one. If you don't like the second one, try a third one. But we all have a responsibility to join an organization that is working for justice. And so, with that, we can kind of think more about how African culture has always been collective in nature. If you really think about it, us as a people, we've never been individualistic. We've never been self centered in that regard. We've always had the notion of sharing. We've always had the notion of opening up our spaces, allowing other people to have resources. Even if we have scarce resources, it's always a question of us still trying to share what we have so that others can have some type of advantage as well. I remember when I was 4 years old, we went to Accra, Ghana, and I remembered participating in a baby shower. And I, of course, don't remember as much as a 4 year old, but thankfully, my parents were able to record this interaction. And I saw how they were teaching me some of the traditional African ways in terms of greeting all the elders in the room. And so for a 4 year old, I mean, that's everybody who's come to the party, right? Because anybody younger than me would probably just be the baby who has yet to be born, right? And so I went around the room, and there's all these elders to me as a 4 year old who are sitting in chairs, and I'm just shaking all of their hands and greeting them, you know, as little 4 year old me. And I just remember thinking, I really look forward to bringing some of those traditions back into spaces that they have been missing from for quite some time. I also think about the tradition of like going to an African wedding and having the broom and showing that the partners are able to jump over the broom as a sign of triumph and dignity, but also understanding that the broom is symbolic of challenges and barriers to come. And so the only way they are able to get through that is to, of course, come through it together by using each other's as forces to support one another so that they can do that. And so when we think about African culture, it's always been collective. Those are just rough examples, but clearly we could think of so many more if we really, really put our minds to it. So African culture is a way of us helping to think about which means there are that are widespread. And this is where we start to understand that the belief when people make physical transitions, they remain essential to a part of our lives. So it's not enough that because they are no longer with us, that their legacy just evaporates. It doesn't work like that. Not if we are committed to the work that they are doing. Because without them, we wouldn't even have the same information to even do the work that we're doing, right? Without them, we wouldn't be able to even break down how we think about things. I look at so many pictures and I'm looking at these pictures here and I'm thinking about, our comrade Adrian down there in the bottom. I'm thinking about all the work that she did to organize against neo-colonialists and colonialists in terms of fighting back. I'm thinking about this picture, Comrade Ajamu. I know you'll correct me if I'm wrong, but I know this is Fidel Castro, so I'm only going to assume that this is Ernesto Che Guevara. So just looking at these two individuals, understanding what this means in terms of us thinking about how all of these different folks throughout time have contributed their lives greatly. We can even think about how many times the US tried to kill Fidel and they failed miserably every single time because of the work that he was doing to advance the struggles of socialist Cuba. And Fidel understood, I'm not just doing this for Cubans. It was never about that because Cubans are some of the most collective people we will ever know in this world. Everything they do so that they can share it with the world. They do it so they can share it with other people. If you want to talk about health, they share all their health resources to make sure we're all healthy. You want to talk about education, they share their curriculum to make sure we all have what we need to be informed and to be knowledgeable. They share everything they have. They have never, ever displayed any type of selfishness. And for that reason, that's why the US has continued to have a blockade over them. We could think about the breakfast program that the Panthers started. Without that, children today still would not be getting breakfast at schools. Without the Panthers, children today going to public schools, I can't speak for private and, charter and all these other indicators, but public schools, they would not have breakfast to this day because the president of the US had to upstage the Panthers and then introduce this national breakfast program. But it was because the US looked like a fool for sending these babies to school with no food in their stomach. When we all know just from personal experience of being hungry, you're more irritable, you're less likely to concentrate and focus, you're agitated, and you're only thinking about food, so you're not really focused. And then there's data that suggests that because you're not focused on the education, because you're hungry, really you're not able to ascertain the information that you need. Not to mention that some of these babies may not be able to get food at their houses. So this breakfast program that the Panthers put on was really one of the few times of the day that they could get a substantive meal that they could put on their body. But they didn't just stop with food, you all. They coupled it with political education because the two go hand in hand. Yes, we're going to give you some food to feed your physical mentality, but we're also going to give you some food to feed your mind, to feed your ideology as well. And so, yeah, these folks are going to continue to live in our spirits. They're going to continue to live in our hearts. They're going to continue to impact us. And I give praise to the Panthers to this day for the health clinics that they established, for the informative meetings that they had on sickle cell anemia and syphilis, so that they could educate our people. People always say education, education. That's the thing that's missing. Well, the Panthers understood that. And they took very complex topics and simplified them so that our people, regardless of what level of education we had, regardless of whether or not we could read, regardless of whether we could write, they were able to talk to these people and help them understand what they needed to do so that they could stay safe. And if they did have sickle cell anemia, they explained to them, these are some ways you can manage your pain. If they did have syphilis, they explained to them, well, this is what you want to do so that you're not passing this on to your partner, and so on and so forth. And so we are completely in awe and thankful to everything that they have done. We are completely in awe and thankful to them. We are thankful that all of these comrades were able to decide that even with their passing into the ancestral realm, our loved ones no longer inhabit our physical existence, but they are now a part of our spiritual, which means they're still influencing us with their ideologies. They're still influencing us with their ideal existence because we understand that that means that they're going to continue to contribute, especially if we keep practicing and expanding what we have learned from them throughout as many different spaces as we can. We continue to talk about them to other people. It is amazing to me that as an educator, there are so many people who still don't know half the stuff that we talk about in these seminars. And I'm talking about like students who are strongly educated about things, but they're really not educated about the real things that matter, the humanitarian things that matter, the anti capitalist things that matter. It always amazes me because that's how strong capitalism is, to kind of conveniently leave that stuff out so that students don't get access to it. And then we're not really living in a society where you're encouraged to do research that is hidden from you. We live in a society where it is celebrated for you to be ignorant. We live in a society where it is exciting when you don't want to look up things and do research, because it is so much more sexy for you to be ignorant than for you to actually resist systems because you're pushing back, trying to learn the truth that they're keeping from you. And yet, but these are the realities, right? And this is what we're looking at. And so if we think about this a little bit more, there was never a space where any of these folks would go away after their work that they did. We would continue to say their names. We would continue to think about the impacts that they have on us. We will continue to do that even as we speak today. And it happens in so many different spaces. But I'm thinking about the fact that the last time I went home to the continent of Africa, I did not have the same wealth of knowledge that I have today. For one, I was 16 and things were very different in my life at that point in terms of my priorities and in terms of me buying into mainstream media that made me think that having $1 million and getting a Mercedes, those things were really important to me. Well, thankfully, my parents continued to work with me and they continued to be patient and they helped me understand that that's not important. Next slide, please. So now, the next time I go back home, I understand. And notice that I called Africa home, not the US. Notice that I called Africa home. Okay. The next time I go back home, I'm so excited to go to the Kwame Nkrumah Museum. First of all, it wasn't built the first time and the second time I went home. And third of all, now I know who Kwame Nkrumah was. Now I know how big his legacy still is. Now I know that without him, I wouldn't know about the Convention People's Party. I wouldn't know that Ghana was an independent nation. I wouldn't know that it was also known as the Gold Coast because that's where gold comes from. I wouldn't know that he was the first president of Ghana. I wouldn't know any of the things that I know. I wouldn't know that he did all the work that he did because he wanted to contribute to us building the same organization that we are broadcasting this seminar to you with today. All because Nkrumah wanted a United States of Africa. And other people agreed with him. Muammar Gaddafi, Sekou Touré, Amilcar Cabral, Thomas Sankara, so many people agreed with him. And again, because they were having the institutions that they had, because they wanted to build a more unified Africa, that's why they had to go. But that doesn't mean that we stop talking about their legacy. So who would even be qualified as a martyr? Well, there's so much more to it than just living and dying, right? You can think about, this adventuristic and even a physical sense, right? A martyr is someone who has made the most ultimate sacrifice. They have completely done this in a way where they can give up their life for the good of the collective. All right. So I'm thinking about Assata Shakur. I'm thinking about Kwame Nkrumah. I'm thinking about Sekou Touré. I'm thinking about some of our comrades who are still living, Theodore Gomes. I'm thinking about Shirley Graham Du Bois. I'm thinking about Adrian Bouillon, our comrade we just mentioned. We have so many different names that we could mention of folks that understood it's not about me. They understood that. And they may not have understood it right away, but over time, because they were in organizations that were working for justice, they started to see that the work they're doing is bigger than them. And when you do that, you're in a better position not only to stay motivated, but to continue working because you want other people to benefit from what you're doing. You don't want to just be the only one who benefits. You want to impact as many people as you can because you want circumstances to change for as many people as possible. You don't want anybody to be miserable living in the current conditions that we're living in. This is why you become a martyr, because you're willing to put everything on the line. You're willing to sacrifice your life twice if you have to, 3 times, 4 times if you have to, if it means that others can live in a better world tomorrow. We can only hope and pray that all of us would have the ounce of humility that these folks had so that we too can once become martyrs. But that means we got to take away the individualism. That means we got to be willing to get messy. That means we got to be willing to get arrested. We got to be willing to lose our lives. We got to be willing to be tortured. We got to be willing to be waterboarded. We have to be willing to do those things. And I don't know about you all, but because of the organizing that I do, because my name is out there the way that it is, I'm clear that the FBI knows who I am. I'm clear that they have my information, my social, my IP. I'm sure that they have all that information. So I tell myself every day, today might be the day that you get abducted and they try to torture you. And I promise you, I have a mantra in my head where I think about why I do everything I do. And it has everything to do with circumstances. Oh, I'm getting emotional. Woo. It has everything to do with circumstances changing for oppressed people everywhere. That's why I do what I do. I am not a mother yet, but I can hope and pray that my child will live in a much, much better world than I would ever have to live in. And if I've done nothing to make this world better for that unborn child, then I don't think I deserve to be a mother, because no child should have to live in this world. No person should have to live in this world. No animal should have to live in this world where if they don't have enough money, they're insignificant. That's absurd. Every single one of us should be pushing against that every single day, because that's absurd. And who are you to assign value to someone based on how much money they have? That's absurd within itself. So we should all be pushing against that. And my mantra is thinking about oppressed people everywhere living in a much better world. That is the only thing that will keep me sane. That is the reason I get out of bed. That is the reason I keep doing this work. And as long as the universe and the ancestors see fit, I will keep waking up to do this work, because I too hope to be a martyr one day. I think that most of us don't even have the type of courage that martyrs have, because we haven't thought about things being bigger than us. We haven't thought about the fact that we might be uncomfortable being waterboarded. Well, of course. But do you think any of these ancestors were excited to get waterboarded? Do you think they were like, "Ooh, can't wait to get that"? What? Like, no. They did what they had to do because they were committed to their principles, you all. They were committed to the fact that this was bigger than them. They were committed to the fact that times needed to change. And because of that, this is why most of the talk of martyrs is with the context of them being extreme. This is why they tend to get villainized. This is why they tend to get criminalized, because we shouldn't be resisting systems. And if we do resist them, then we're unpatriotic if we do that. Well, who said I wanted to be patriotic? But that's another subject for another day. We need to continue speaking these folks into existence. And if you don't know who these folks are, do your research, increase your political education. But don't just do it by yourself. Join an organization that's working for justice so you can talk about these things with other people. A lot of these comrades have written material that's very complex to understand. If you are just reading it by yourself, you're doing yourself a disadvantage. But if you join an organization that's working for justice, you have a better chance of breaking it down with someone else. Ashe.
Ashe, obrigada. Thank you very much. Asante Sana, Nadasi. And we just want to continue on as soon as the computer acts right and talk about January 17th, which is, as we mentioned, we call it the Day of Martyrs. And it was on January 17th, 1961, that Patrice Lumumba, Maurice Mpolo, and Joseph Okito of the National Congolese Movement were assassinated for fighting for the independence in the Congo. And this is critically important in history because the Congo, we would argue, is one of the many ground zeros in the world, even today in 2025. It's the most mineral resource rich area of Africa, and Africa is the most mineral resource rich area in the world. In fact, Africa has more natural resources than the rest of the world combined. So the Congo is the high has holds the highest percentage of valuable natural resources. We're talking about during that time, 1960, we're talking about uranium, which the Congo still today has a very high percentage of the uranium produced in the world. But during that time, especially, uranium served the purpose of making atomic power, and you had the nuclear arms race. So you had all these countries around the world who were fighting to get into the Congo and mine up this uranium for that purpose. And then you had the National Congolese Movement emerge, and the leaders of that movement, people like comrades Patrice Lumumba and Mpolo and Okito, and they had a non-compromising approach to fighting for independence against Belgium, and nationalizing, meaning regaining control of all the Congolese resources in the middle of the Cold War, where atomic power and uranium had such value, right? They had the audacity to stand up and say, these are our resources, these are African resources. And if you know the history, and we've talked about it in other workshops, we know that 2 years before 1960, when the Congo became independent, Patrice Lumumba traveled to Ghana to participate in the All African People's Conference in December of 1958 that was organized by the Convention People's Party and Kwame Nkrumah. And Lumumba was heavily influenced at that conference by people like Frantz Fanon. He struck up a friendship with Frantz Fanon at that conference that continued until Frantz Fanon, or until, I'm sorry, Lumumba was killed in 1961. And of course, Fanon died shortly after that under mysterious circumstances. But Lumumba remained a mentee of Kwame Nkrumah. And it was the Ghanaian troops of Kwame Nkrumah and the Guinean troops of Sekou Touré who, as we've talked about, when the Joseph Kasavubu, who was the president of the newly independent Congo, um, acquiesced to the interests of imperialism and wanted to undermine the efforts of Patrice Lumumba, who was the prime minister of the new government in the Congo, by claiming that he would take Lumumba's position from him at the pressure of the imperialists, which he had no power under the newly developing Congolese constitution to do so. That this, sent the country further into chaos. It was plotted against by the imperialists from the very beginning. It wasn't even the National Congolese Movement wasn't even able to take their seats for no more than like 2 weeks before the sabotage started. And this is when Lumumba and the leaders of the MNC, National Congolese Movement, were put under house arrest in the Congo. And it was the Ghanaian troops and the Guinean troops that kept them alive for as long as they did. But Lumumba wanted to speak to the people of the Congo and let them know what was happening. So he ventured out without the knowledge of the Ghanaian and the Guinean troops, which at that time were the only protection that they really had. The Congolese troops were rapidly coming under the control of a man at that time who was known as Joseph Desiree Mobutu. And Mobutu was being courted by the Central Intelligence Agency to be their man in the Congo and was urged to stage a coup d'etat against Lumumba and the Congolese government, which Mobutu did do. And Lumumba was placed under house arrest, which again, they escaped from that. And they were captured by what they called the ANC, the National Congolese Military, led by Mobutu, who eventually changed his name to Mobutu Sese Seko. And Lumumba, Okito, and Mpolo were tortured. They were murdered. and their bodies were dissolved in acid to uh, eliminate the evidence. And of course, this was January 17th, 1961, and the Congo to this day has not recovered from that ultimate act of sabotage against the people of the Congo, against the people of Africa. And the Congolese resources are still uranium, but now we have the cobalt and the coltan and the diamonds and the gold are always there and everything else that comes out of the Congo that's a mad rush by these multinational corporations like Apple and Samsung and all of these crooks and criminals to exploit the human and material resources of the Congo and to further subjugate the aspirations of the National Congolese Movement and Lumumba and people like Okito and Mpolo and all of the Africans who wanted the Congo to be free and wanted Africa to be free and wanted African people to be free. So that's what happened in the Congo. And today, the Congo remains a neo-colonial state dominated by multinational capitalist corporations. The people of the Congo suffer immensely because of this suffering. But we, of course, honor these soldiers for justice because the fact that they did that tells us that it could be done. And we know that it will be done, that we will have victory in the Congo and all throughout Africa. And if we go to January 17th, 1969, we know that the Black Panther Party had just been in existence for 3 years at that time, and that the LA branch of the Black Panther Party was the first branch of the party outside of the Oakland, San Francisco Bay Area, and that Apprentice Bunchy Carter, who was a very well-renowned poet in the Los Angeles area and was the leader of the Slossons gang and was politically conscious enough to bring a lot of those Slossons into the Black Panther Party to convert from gang members to a liberation force. And that John Huggins was a tireless administrator in the LA branch of the Black Panther Party, and that they were working to consolidate a community base. And they were struggling because one of the things that happened during the Black Power movement phase of the Civil Rights Movement is that the capitalist system figured out that if they threw resources to the organizations, they could get a lot of people to back down from their militant stance. So they began to throw resources into cities like LA, and there was a fight to control these resources. Some of the people wanted to get access to the resources to further develop their organizing work for liberation, and other people wanted to get control of those resources just to control the financial resources. And some of that struggle was being manifested through the actions on the University of California, Los Angeles campus, UCLA. And there was a meeting held on January 17th, 1969 in Campbell Hall on the UCLA campus. And a fight broke out, shots were fired, and Bunchy Carter and John Huggins lay dead in the ruins after that. And the interesting thing about both of these scenarios is that each one of these scenarios, whether you're talking about what happened to our comrades in the Congo or what happened to our comrades in Los Angeles 8 years later, both of those situations were manipulated by counterintelligence efforts designed to sabotage our efforts as African people to be free. And that's what unites them. And that's the message that we need to understand when we look at these situations. The Central Intelligence Agency was extremely active in the Congo, attempting to undermine Lumumba's government. They were the ones who ordered Lumumba and his officers to be taken under house arrest. They were the ones who facilitated the coup d'etat. They were the ones who ordered the assassination of Lumumba, Okito, and Mpolo. And this has been something that we've known for decades, but now because of the international pressure, the CIA in recent years has acknowledged their role in facilitating the murder of these Congolese comrades and in destabilizing the Congo, in encouraging the succession of at that time, what was known as the Katanga region, encouraging the succession of Katanga, where all the most plentiful supply of the resources were located. And this man, Moshe Tishambe, encouraging him to declare Katanga a separate region to take away power from what Lumumba was trying to do with the Congo. It was the CIA that facilitated all of that, as well as Belgium intelligence and all of the imperialist intelligence agencies. And of course, what happened with the Black Panther Party in 1969 was directly facilitated by the Federal Bureau of Investigation's counterintelligence program. Letters were sent to the US organization of Dr. Maulana Karenga and the Black Panther Party, and there were threats made in the letters. The organizations were encouraged to have antagonism and animosity towards each other, and that's what led to some of the confrontations that ended up, unfortunately, with the deaths of Bunchy, John, and many other Black Panther Party members in the Los Angeles area. So this is the reason why these freedom fighters were assassinated. It was a part of the international intelligence effort to undermine African liberation activity. Nothing else. Nothing else. And in each of these cases, this is not a case of where we can blame ourselves. These are not cases where you can bring that tired ass argument into the discussion. These are clear cases, both of them, where the US government and all imperialist governments organized to sabotage our movements for justice, up to and including killing our leaders. This is what they do. And it's just important that we understand that. And the reason why we lift up these soldiers for liberation, in the case of our Congolese ancestors, they were fighting against what could unquestionably be called insurmountable odds. And they were doing it in the face of certain doom. And even despite that, they refused to relinquish their dignity. When Patrice Lumumba stood up at the Congo's independence ceremony in July of 1960, and King Bardin from Belgium came there to speak and talked admirably and with respect about King Leopold, whose legacy in the Congo was killing 10, 15, 20 million Africans to ensure that his control over, at that time, the ivory in the Congo was cemented, to uplift and increase his wealth and his riches in Belgium. He didn't even have enough respect for the Congo to ever physically even go to the Congo. But he made a fortune exploiting the Congo and causing absolute terror and doom for the masses of our people there. And Lumumba had the courage and audacity to stand up in the independence commemoration and to challenge King Bourdon's portrayal of Belgium and King Leopold as people who had uplifted the Congo. And when he did that, that began to cement his death in the Congo and all of the work that he was doing to solidify a government in the Congo. And that's why we lift him up, because of the courage and commitment that he and his National Congolese Movement operatives demonstrated in standing up directly against imperialism, even though they knew what the consequences would be. And the Black Panther Party is in the same vein, in that they had the audacity as young African people from the inner cities of the United States of America. They had the utter nerve to stand up against the most powerful government in the history of human civilization or uncivilization. And they knew by doing that they were, even if they didn't understand what COINTELPRO was yet, even if our comrades in the Congo didn't understand about international imperialism yet, but what we knew in the Black Panther Party is that there would certainly be consequences for us having the audacity to stand up and fight back. And so despite that, they still had the courage to do that. And they had many contradictions. In our circle today, our cadre circle, we had our cadre circle this morning. And one of the things that we talked about was the institutionalization of patriarchy, because of what we're reading. The book we're reading now is a book on patriarchy, and we had a very dynamic discussion about patriarchy today. and how much patriarchy is still a part of even the our most advanced organizations. So we certainly are not perfect, and there's a lot of work to do. But these comrades have paved the way for us. They've sat down and made it possible so that we could have the opportunity to learn from their errors, to build upon them, and to be stronger in our work to try to create something better that is well versed in combating the ills that hold us back and can take us even farther in our quest for freedom and forward progress. So, this is the reason why we lift them up. And we lift them up as examples to demonstrate that we can win, you all. Like the National Congolese Movement, they're gone. They no longer exist. The Black Panther Party, they're gone. They no longer exist. But what the contribution is that they gave to us is they showed us that even with limited resources, even with a lack of uh, systemic education. I mean, in the case of the Congo, when the Congolese Africans declared themselves independent in June, July of 1960, they had no more than 20 people in the entire country who had technical training and education. That's all they had. But yet they still built a movement that brought imperialism shaking to its knees. That's the lesson that we need to take away from what they did. The Black Panther Party had, I mean, even if you listen to the FBI, they had probably at the height of their membership, a few thousand members at the most. But the Black Panther Party report I'm sorry, the FBI report on the Black Panther Party that was instigated by J. Edgar Hoover and taken to Richard Nixon in 1968. In that report, Hoover reported to Richard Nixon that the Black Panther Party had no more than 800 core members. That's what they said. But they said that the biggest challenge and concern they had about the Black Panther Party in 1968 is that with Africans in the US, 25 years old and younger, about 50% of that demographic supported the aims and objectives of the Black Panther Party. And that scared the shit out of the power structure in this country. And it was from that they began to get together with the Rockefeller family, McGeorge, Bundy, the Ford Foundation, and they created affirmative action. That's where all that came from in an effort. And as Shakur said, they brought in free breakfast, all of these things to undermine the militancy that was operational among our people in this backward ass country at that time, to undermine it, to try to get us to veer off that path of militancy. And you can't say that they weren't successful, because all you got to do is open your eyes and look around today, and you got all these Negroes running up to, it's like African had a commentary today that made a lot of sense. He's talking about you shouldn't be surprised that Snoop Dogg is performing for Donald Trump's inauguration, because Snoop Dogg has emerged into a mainstream celebrity in capitalist US. He's on one of those damn, what is it? I don't know. I don't watch that nonsense. But my wife has it on where you sing and they coach you, whatever the hell it is. And he's one of the people on that show, one of these shows that millions of people watch. He's one of the judges. And he's on these I can't even watch my basketball team play without seeing his ass on there trying to sell phone service or some goddamn service for the capitalist system. So, this is beyond what African people can do for him at this point. He's in the back pocket of the capitalist system, and he's trying to increase his net worth. I think I read that his net worth is like 160 million, where he's trying to get up there with his buddies, Dr. Dre and Jay-Z and all those folks that are billionaires. And so he can't do that playing to the interests and concerns of the African masses. He has to do that by shuffling and shuck jiving and playing a coon and a tom for the capitalist system. So of course he's gonna play for Donald Trump's inauguration. He's gonna do everything else, and Nelly and all the rest of those goddamn coons. Of course they're gonna do that, because that's how they lift themselves up individually. That's how they do that. These people don't have the principles and the morality to forsake personal comfort and wealth to do the thing that's right for the masses of their people. They don't even understand that kind of talk if you talk that to them. So you got to understand who they are. You shouldn't be surprised by any of that. But these people we're talking about today did have that kind of dignity. So they didn't come away with no paycheck. They came away losing their lives, losing their freedom, losing everything they had because they were willing to stand up. And that's the difference. And so the question for all of us, excuse me, in 2025 is what kind of people are we going to be? Some of us are just like Snoop Dogg. We might talk a good game about the struggle. Some of us we talk a good game about what we want to do and what we want. We don't ever do a damn thing. After a while, some of us are not stupid. So, we know how to evaluate conditions that we live in. As organizers, we know that. As revolutionary organizers, it's a survival tactic to know that. So if you're always talking about what you think needs to happen, but you're not ever doing anything, we know you ain't gonna do nothing. You're not fooling us, you're just fooling yourself. So some of us will never, ever, ever be in the position where we will take that step to engage in real work. And some of us will always be willing to sell ourselves. You turn on social media, it's so many coons on there. Jason Whitlock, Candace Owens, Mace, Waka Flocka, Ice Cube, Snoop Dogg, Cooney Coon, all of these people. There's so many of the unknown coon, want to be a celebrity coon. They're all on there, and they're all have all these talking points about there's no white supremacy. I saw one coon on there this morning that was saying white people never, white people shouldn't have to apologize for slavery. They didn't have anything to do with that. And if they have to apologize for that, then black people should have to apologize for committing 54% of the crimes in this country. And all these idiots, including a lot of Africans, are on there. Well, that makes sense. Well, that only makes sense to you because you're a goddamn fool. Anybody that knows any information, even your damn FBI, they produce an annual crime statistics report every month, and then they compile it and produce an annual one every year. And you could say, well, I don't trust the FBI. We were telling you the FBI were criminals before you could spell FBI. So we don't want to hear you talking about who you trust and don't trust. You're a damn fool. But even if you don't trust them, you don't have any data any better than theirs. And they even say that 70% of the crime across the board in this country every year is committed by white people. So this, these people, 50 Africans commit 50. You pulled that statistic out of your dirty, stinking ass. It's not even real. So, people, oh, that makes sense. It makes sense to you because you're a flaming idiot. That's why it makes sense to you. So this is why we support and respect these folks who live by dignity and represent dignity. So we ask you if you truly love and respect them. The only legitimate way for us to demonstrate our love and respect for anyone, right, is to carry on the traditions that they exemplified. So if you're not in an organization, don't talk to us about how you respect Patrice Lumumba. Don't talk to us about how you respect Bunchy and John Huggins and Maurice Mpolo and Joseph Okito. You don't respect them because you're not even willing to do what they did. They had organization. They had the National Congolese Movement and the Black Panther Party. They weren't talking about, well, I'm going to try to do something on my own. I don't have time. They weren't saying that nonsense. They dedicated their time to liberation and lost their lives with it. If you're talking about you don't have time, you're not serious. You're not fooling us. We know the difference. How you going to say you're for liberation, but you don't have time to work for it? I mean, that doesn't even make any sense. These martyrs always represented organization and the sacrifice that goes with organizational work. All the time, they represent that. And what that means objectively is that if you were not engaged in organization work, then you aren't holding up these people and you're not serious about changing this world that we live in. You're just not serious. So the way you should start out every conversation is, I'm not serious. I'm just running my goddamn mouth. But I think, and then that'll trigger everybody. Well, I ain't gonna listen to them because they're not even serious enough to take what they're telling me to do and to do it themselves. So this is the lesson that we should take away from comrades Lumumba, Mpolo, Okito, Carter, and Huggins, and the many other comrades we demonstrate and talk about all the time, that we have a responsibility to continue their work. No matter how hard it gets, no matter how tired we get, we have a responsibility to do that. And if we aren't ready to commit to that responsibility, then we're just not serious. So just get yourself a t-shirt that says, I'm not serious. Don't listen to a damn thing I have to say, and wear it every goddamn day until it stinks, because you stink with the values you're perpetuating. So you should stink physically and spiritually. We don't want that. We want people who are going to be at least making a sincere effort to try to make a contribution. That doesn't mean none of us are perfect, but you have to be willing to at least be consistent with making an effort, because our enemies are consistent. And the minute we recognize that simple thing, that's the time when we won't have to just talk about our fallen comrades, because we will be building capacity to bring what they sacrificed for into total existence. And so we thank you all for joining us. We want to invite you back next week, Sunday, January 26th, when we talk about the gift of another wonderful ancestor, Ahmed Sekou Touré. So please join us next week while we talk about Sekou Touré and the wonderful contributions he's made for the African liberation struggle all over the world. The QR code in the left upper hand corner has all of the AAPRP programs in it. So we want to invite you to click on the red and white QR code, or not click on it, scan it. The programs are in there, as well as the Forward Ever Shop. Buy clothes, support the African Revolution by doing so. Click communist.org, support this revolutionary Pan-African blog. We want you to do that. And again, we have a program tomorrow at the Shakur Neighborhood Community Center in Oak Park here in Sacramento. Those of you local, we invite you to come out 11 to 5. We're going to have programming, some edutainment, and also some programming on the radical work of Reverend Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. They'll be giving away food and clothes, so we invite you to come by and participate with us tomorrow. And then again on February 1st, Saturday, we're having our community discussion on how we build institutions to protect and defend us in a fascist reality. So please spread the word about these events and join the All African People's Revolutionary Party by going to aaprp-intl.org. We invite you to do that, at least watch the video and get orientated so you can at least know what we're about. That way you won't have to guess and spread misinformation. You can know for sure. So please go do that. And then we want you to become a monthly sponsor of Burkina Books, our work on the ground in Burkina Faso. Please click on the lower right-hand corner QR code, the black and white one, and do that. And finally, we ask you to buy my book and tell people about it, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence, A Guide for Organizing Defense Against White Supremacist, Patriarchal, and Fascist Violence. I have a lot of dates on my calendar to travel, to do security trainings, anti-fascist work. I fund that work by proceeds I get from this book. It's only $8. You have to buy it through Amazon.com. I don't want to hear it about Amazon. Save that for someone who's doing nothing but sitting around talking. We're getting work done. So please buy the book. Tell people about it. Do reading groups with it. Help us build this work. This is the only way that we're going to be able to build institutions to get free. So please support this work. Please support this work, because if you don't, no one else will. And if that's the case, when the next effort comes to attack genuine revolutionaries, you would have to stand up and say, I'm responsible because I didn't do anything to support this genuine work that was going on. So we don't want you to have to be in that position. So support this work. We give you so much information about what's going on. And you don't tell anybody. Tell some people. Make it your responsibility to tell at least 2 people about everything I've mentioned here. Enjoy the rest of your evening. Forward ever, backwards never.